Welcome to Listen to Learn, a podcast by the Consistent 24. In each episode, we explore best-selling books to help you listen, learn, and start earning. Turn your talents into profits and start your journey today.
All right, so we're diving into Seth Godin's Purple Cow, a book that's practically a marketing Bible. It's amazing how relevant it still is in today's crazy marketing landscape.
What really gets me is how Gogi just throws out the old "they will come" idea. Like he just says, nope, it's not going to cut it anymore. He makes a really strong case for why playing it safe is actually the riskiest thing you can do in today's world.
Totally. It's like trying to stand out in a room full of people all shouting the same thing. You kind of have to be a bit outrageous, be that purple cow to get noticed.
He nails it when he talks about how the old marketing model just isn't working anymore.
Yeah.
And it's not just because there's so much noise and competition.
You're right. It's deeper than that, isn't it? It's like the whole marketplace is shifted, fragmented.
Exactly. We've gone from this mass media thing to a million little niches. Even within something as specific as, say, vegan baking, you've got a zillion subcategories, each with its own little tribe of diehards.
So how do you even begin to reach those passionate few? Godin talks about the importance of early adopters and sneezers. Can you break that down a bit?
Definitely. Godin argues that you shouldn't try to be everything to everyone. Instead, you need to zero in on those folks who are already looking for something new and different. And even more importantly, those who are excited to tell everyone they know about it. He calls them sneezers, those early adopters who are like walking, talking billboards for your product.
So it's not about mass appeal, but about finding your tribe, that perfect niche, and really owning it.
Precisely. He uses Zespri kiwi fruit as an example. Instead of battling it out with every other fruit in the supermarket, they got laser focused on Latino foodies, a group known for being adventurous with their palates.
And that paid off for them big time. It's like that saying, find your tribe and thrive. But you really have to know who your tribe is, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you have to speak their language.
Right.
Logitech is another great case study. They realized they weren't just selling keyboards and mice. They were selling style and innovation to a tech-savvy crowd who always wanted the latest and greatest gadgets. So they had to up their game in terms of design.
Which is where that whole design thinking thing comes in, right? It's about more than just looks.
Totally. Design thinking is about understanding your customers so deeply that you create a product or experience that they didn't even know they needed, but suddenly can't live without.
It reminds me of that McDonald's France campaign where they encourage people to eat fast food in moderation. Talk about going against the grain.
And that's what made it so brilliant. It addressed the elephant in the room, but in a way that felt authentic and even a little bit subversive. They weren't trying to pretend they were something they weren't. Instead, they embraced those potential downsides while subtly positioning themselves as a brand that values transparency. It really made you stop and think.
It's a good reminder that sometimes the most effective marketing messages are the ones you least expect, but I think a lot of companies shy away from that kind of boldness. They're too afraid to rock the boat. Godin talks about this as the fear of being remarkable, doesn't he?
Oh, absolutely. He nails it when he says that companies often become so paralyzed by the fear of criticism or failure that they churn out these bland, forgettable products that just get lost in the noise.
It's like they're so afraid of being seen as too much that they end up being completely invisible.
Exactly. They blend in with all the other boring stuff out there.
Yeah.
Godin argues that in today's hyper-competitive market, if you're not being talked about, you're in trouble. You might as well not even exist. He uses Chip Conley and his transformation of a rundown motel into the Phoenix Hotel as an example. It became this haven for musicians and artists. It wasn't for everyone, and that was the whole point.
It's so true. Sometimes the best way to stand out is to niche down and become that go-to for a very specific group of people. Speaking of niching down, he also talks about Lionel Poulain's Bakery in Paris, right?
Oh yeah, that place is legendary. They resurrected these ancient bread-making techniques and created this whole mystique around their bread.
People were literally lining up for hours just to get a loaf. It's amazing what you can achieve when you tap into something truly special and share it with passion. But how do you make sure your purple cow doesn't just become another face in the crowd? Godin refers to this as milking the cow.
He's talking about maximizing the impact of what you've created. You got the early adopters, those sneezers. Now it's about amplifying their enthusiasm, turning them into raving fans who tell everyone they know.
Okay, so we've talked about why being remarkable is essential, the power of those niche markets, and the need to think like a designer. But how do we actually overcome that fear of standing out? How do we take all this theory and turn it into action?
Well, that's where Godin's magic cycle comes in. It's like a roadmap for building a lasting business around that remarkable thing you've created.
I love a good roadmap. So where do we begin?
It all starts with permission. You need to build a relationship with your audience based on trust and mutual respect. Godin's a huge advocate for permission marketing. Instead of bombarding people with messages they don't want, you invite them in. Give them a reason to want to hear from you.
So it's less about interruption and more about creating a connection, a sense of belonging even.
Exactly. And once you've earned their permission, that's when you unleash those sneezers, those passionate fans who are your greatest asset.
They become your megaphone, amplifying your message far and wide. It's like word of mouth on steroids. But Godin also warns against resting on your laurels, right? Even after you found some success.
Absolutely. He's adamant that the purple cow isn't a one-hit wonder. It's just one part of a constant cycle of innovation and reinvention. He warns against getting complacent, falling into the trap of just milking the cow once you've achieved a certain level of success.
Because what's remarkable today might be commonplace tomorrow, right?
Exactly. You have to keep evolving, keep pushing boundaries. He uses the term reinvestment to describe this crucial next step. Take those profits, that momentum, and reinvest it into developing new products, exploring new ideas, and basically refusing to let the competition catch up.
It's like that old saying, innovate or die. Easier said than done.
For sure. It can feel overwhelming, especially in the beginning. But Godin has this great question that always gets me thinking, what does Howard know?
He's talking about Howard Schultz of Starbucks, right?
Yep. He spent months in Italy, just immersing himself in coffee culture, understanding the rituals, the passion, the artistry behind it all.
He was tapping into that otaku, that deep well of enthusiasm that Godin says is so essential for creating something truly remarkable.
Exactly. Think about companies like Patagonia. Their love for the outdoors, for adventure, for preserving the environment, it's in their DNA. People connect with that authenticity.
They're not just buying a jacket, they're buying into a belief system, a way of life. But what if you're selling something that doesn't feel inherently exciting or groundbreaking? Like what if you're selling, I don't know, salt?
Stone would say even salt can be remarkable.
He's got a point. He uses the example of those gourmet salts harvested from all over the world.
People pay a premium for them because they offer something unique, a story, an experience.
It's about finding those hidden gems, those often overlooked details that can elevate even the most mundane product or service into something extraordinary. And that's where things get interesting.
Because in a world where good enough just doesn't cut it anymore, it's those small, remarkable details that can make all the difference.
You know, it's funny, before diving into Purple Cow, I hadn't considered the power of design thinking beyond aesthetics, but Godin really opened my eyes to its potential to transform a product from meh to must-have.
He drives home that point with so many diverse examples. It's not just about making something pretty, it's about solving a problem, sparking a conversation, or even challenging the status quo.
Exactly. Like that Dutch boy paint can we talked about earlier, it wasn't just visually appealing, it tapped into that inherent human desire for novelty and shareability. Which makes me think about how much our relationship with marketing messages has changed.
It's night and day compared to even a decade ago. Consumers are savvier, more skeptical, and bombarded with more messages than ever before. Simply shouting louder won't cut it.
Right. That's where Godin's emphasis on permission marketing becomes so crucial. It's that shift from intrusion to invitation, building a relationship based on trust and mutual benefit.
He uses the analogy of dating versus stalking, which always makes me chuckle. You can't force someone to love your brand, but you can create an environment where they feel seen, understood, and eager to learn more.
It's about creating a two-way conversation, not just blasting out a one-sided sales pitch. And that brings me to another concept that resonated with me, the idea of sneezers as brand ambassadors.
Godin's take on sneezers is fascinating because it goes beyond traditional influencer marketing. It's not just about finding people with large followings. It's about identifying those individuals who are genuinely passionate about your product and empowering them to share their enthusiasm authentically.
It reminds me of that incredible word-of-mouth campaign that surrounded the release of the Blair Witch Project. The film itself was shot like a documentary, and the filmmakers cleverly leaned into that ambiguity, creating this aura of mystery and speculation online.
And it worked brilliantly. People couldn't stop talking about it, debating whether it was real or not. By the time the film was released, it had already achieved this legendary status, all thanks to those early sneezers who bought into the hype.
It's a testament to the power of authenticity and intrigue in a world saturated with predictable marketing messages. Which makes me wonder, how can we cultivate that same level of organic buzz in a world increasingly driven by algorithms and targeted ads?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's something Godin addresses head-on. He argues that even in today's digital landscape, the fundamental principles of remarkable marketing still apply. It's about creating something worthy of being talked about, something that sparks curiosity, and crucially, something that adds value to people's lives.
He uses the example of Google, a company that has become synonymous with innovation and user-friendliness. They didn't achieve their success through flashy marketing campaigns or celebrity endorsements.
They did it by solving a problem. Before Google, navigating the vast expanse of the internet was cumbersome and frustrating. They made information accessible, intuitive, and even enjoyable. And in doing so, they earned the trust and loyalty of millions of users worldwide.
It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most effective form of marketing is simply creating a product or service that speaks for itself. But what about those of us who aren't building the next Google? How can we apply these principles to our own businesses, especially in the face of limited budgets and fierce competition?
Godin would argue that it's not about the size of your budget, but the size of your ideas. He encourages us to embrace a mindset of experimentation, to view our businesses as laboratories where we can test, learn, and iterate our way to remarkable.
He talks about the importance of measuring your efforts and being adaptable. What works today might not work tomorrow, so you need to constantly be monitoring your results and making adjustments. He highlights Zara, the fast fashion giant, as a prime example of this adaptive approach.
Zara's ability to rapidly respond to changing trends and consumer preferences is legendary. They've mastered the art of the quick pivot, constantly iterating on their designs and supply chains to stay ahead of the curve.
It's like they've turned their entire business into a giant feedback loop, constantly listening to their customers and adjusting your strategies accordingly. And that's something we can all learn from, whether we're running a multinational corporation or a one-person Etsy shop.
Absolutely. And this ties into another crucial aspect of Godin's magic cycle: reinvestment. It's tempting to rest on your laurels once you've achieved a certain level of success, but complacency is the enemy of remarkable.
He uses the cautionary tale of Stu Leonard's, a once innovative grocery store chain that ultimately lost its edge by failing to adapt and innovate. It's a stark reminder that even the most successful businesses can become relics of the past if they're not constantly pushing boundaries and seeking new ways to delight their customers.
It's like the old saying, innovate or die, right? But constantly innovating can feel daunting, even overwhelming.
Absolutely, especially for those of us who aren't naturally wired to be disruptors. So how do we cultivate that spirit of innovation within ourselves and our businesses?
That's where Godin's question, what does Howard know? Becomes incredibly powerful. He's referring to Howard Schultz of Starbucks, who famously immersed himself in Italian coffee culture before launching what would become a global phenomenon.
It wasn't just about replicating a product, it was about understanding the soul, the ritual, the passion behind a perfect cup of coffee. He tapped into that otaku, that deep-seated enthusiasm that permeates every aspect of the Starbucks brand.
And that's what we need to find in our own work. That thing that truly ignites our passion, that thing that makes us want to jump out of bed in the morning and shout from the rooftops.
It's about finding that sweet spot where our talents, our values, and our customers' desires intersect. But what if our product or service doesn't feel particularly groundbreaking? What if we're selling, well, salt?
But even salt can be remarkable, my friend. And that's the beauty of Godin's message. It's not about what you sell, but how you sell it. He challenges us to ask ourselves, is this more boring than salt?
Because even a seemingly mundane product can be elevated, differentiated, even celebrated with the right approach. He talks about those gourmet salts harvested from remote regions around the world, each with its unique flavor profile and story to tell.
It's about finding the purple cow within the ordinary, the extraordinary within the everyday. And that, I think, is where things get really exciting.
Because it means that remarkable is not reserved for the chosen few. It's accessible to anyone with the imagination, the courage, and the tenacity to pursue it.
And that's a message worth spreading.
One of the things I appreciate most about Godin is that he practices what he preaches. He doesn't just tell us to be remarkable, he lives it.
He truly embodies the purple cow philosophy. It's not about hype or empty promises, it's about authenticity.
And that genuine enthusiasm comes through in everything he does. Which makes me think about those unexpected, remarkable examples he throws in. They're not all billion-dollar companies or flashy products.
That's so true. He'll go from discussing a world-class hotel to praising the local ice cream stand with employees in matching bow ties. It really highlights the idea that remarkable is a choice, not a budget.
Exactly. It reminds me of his example of LL Bean's legendary return policy. You can literally send them ashes, and they'll honor it.
It sounds insane, but it's brilliant marketing. It creates this narrative of trust, of going above and beyond, that people can't help but share.
It makes you wonder if they've ever been burned by that policy, but then again, maybe that's the point.
Exactly. The unexpectedness, the generosity, it gets people talking.
Yeah.
But he also highlights examples where being remarkably difficult can actually work in your favor.
You're thinking of the Bloomberg terminal, right? That notoriously complex yet essential tool for Wall Street traders.
Precisely. It's expensive, it's complicated, and it takes serious effort to master. Yet that exclusivity, that high barrier to entry, adds to its allure. It becomes a status symbol, signal that you've arrived.
It's like those exclusive clubs that are so hard to get into, they become even more desirable. But he also talks about those small, personalized touches that elevate an experience from ordinary to extraordinary.
Like remembering a regular's order by heart, or anticipating a guest's needs before they even have to ask.
He mentions how the staff at the Four Seasons knew to have Ted Leonsis' iced tea waiting for him without him ever having to utter a word.
It's about creating that you belong here feeling, making someone feel like more than just a transaction. And, remarkable doesn't always have to be grand or expensive.
Remember that example he gave of the business card? The one that just had the owner's home phone number on it, encouraging customer feedback?
So simple, yet so powerful. It spoke volumes about accountability and customer focus.
Talk about under-promise, over-deliver. He also highlights Apple's customer service, specifically their speed and efficiency. They overnighted a courier to pick up his broken laptop and returned it fixed within 48 hours.
It's amazing how much those small gestures can make such a big difference. In a world of automated responses and outsourced call centers, that personal touch really stands out.
It really does. And he contrasts that with the intentional outrageousness of someone like John Waters, whose early films were practically designed to shock audiences.
It just goes to show that sometimes being different, even polarizing, can be its own form of remarkability.
It makes you wonder, are there industries or businesses where being remarkably bad is almost a strategy?
Well, think about those restaurants with a reputation for having rude waitstaff. It becomes part of their charm, a badge of honor for those in the know. But it's a delicate balance.
Absolutely, and probably not a strategy I'd recommend to everyone. But I think Godin's overall message is about being intentional. Whether you're going for delightful or deliberately jarring, it needs to serve a purpose.
It can't just be random. It has to be part of a larger strategy.
A strategy for being remarkable, because ultimately that's what it's all about, right? Standing out from the crowd, creating something memorable, something that truly resonates with people.
He challenges us to be brave enough to be different, to not be afraid to break the mold and forge our own path.
Because in a world saturated with noise, the quietest voice never gets heard. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Purple Cow, remember this. Remarkable isn't a destination, it's a journey. And it's a journey that's open to all of us.
It's about embracing our own unique strengths, passions, and perspectives, and using them to create something truly extraordinary.
So go out there, find your purple cow, and make some noise.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Listen to Learn, the podcast by The Consistent 24. We hope you found some valuable insights today that will help you turn your knowledge into action and maybe even start earning from what you've learned. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. And remember, you can always dive deeper into the books we discuss by grabbing a copy from your favorite bookstore, whether online or local. Stay consistent, keep learning, and until next time, just listen to learn.